The stream has pretty much full tree cover throughout its entire length and keeps the water cold. And cold water that's like gold mine for trout.
The rivers, you know, in New England, they're everywhere else in the country, they're sort of the lifeblood of the town. I mean, every town's by a river. Historically, I mean, it was for grist mills and lime kilns, and all the power was drawn from the river. That had detrimental effects to, you name the fish.
One place that us as a species went wrong is that, yeah, we have the Adirondack State Forest or the national parks out west, but those are so small compared to the actual environment and ecosystems.
We've been farming along the rivers for hundreds of years. You had a house, it was by water. If you had a town, it was by water. So if only we had known. Like dams. Now they just end up costing a ton of money to remove. And they just did horrible things to fish stocks that they'll never be the same, likely. Like we died on the vine.
Some of these rivers I'd love to fish 100 years ago, 200 years ago. It really, really messes them up. Even with all the walk-arounds that the states go through, like fish ladders and like put them in a truck, drive them up above the dam. It's just unnecessary stress for the fish.
Pretty empty, but that's basically how it works. So there's that supply pipe in the front there. That's a conveyance pipe, and you have a valve that you create as much water flow as you want to using that valve that's in the headworks. But basically, like I said, it's just a man-made stream. We pass water through here. That front screen keeps the fish in that area, and then the hopper encompasses that whole area. So if there are fish, it would just capture them and bring them.
September 15th, when we began this lift, we had 6 other salmon other than the 2 that we're working up today. We've had as many as 189 salmon lifted in one fall. Last year, I believe we had 55. The past few years, the numbers have been lower. That's part of what we're trying to figure out.
They trap them and then transport them over the dam, which isn't ideal. You know, anytime you're catching or trapping an animal, it's putting stress on them, and especially as they're spawning, that's not good.
Our hope is that we can increase the salmon runs so that it creates better in-stream fisheries here in the Winooski River, but also the hope is that we'll be able to have enough fish that we get some natural reproduction occurring in the Winooski River as well.
Well, a major part of the reason the salmon runs are so low is that there are a bunch of huge dams on the river, so the fish don't have access to their spawning grounds. And because of that, the runs are now supplemented by stocking.
Welcome back. Local biologists have devoted more than a year to this cause, building up the population of fish in Lake Champlain.
Yeah, the goal? Lots of fish swimming under the surface of the water. But that process starts back here on shore. Conservation correspondent Bridget Butler explains.
From purely a trout perspective, stocking's a bad thing. It creates more competition, and those stocked fish aren't as adept at surviving in their environment as a wild fish will be. They haven't had to evade predators since the beginning of their life, and if they spawn with wild fish, there's a potential to create weaker offspring.
I mean, a lot of the east was deforested at one time. And the native trout, well, it's a char, the brook trout, was the native trout species in the east. And once all the timber got cut, there goes that cold water. You know, the trees are providing shade for the water and keeping it cold. So that's when the brown trout got introduced from Europe, you know, back in the 1800s. So most of our fishing right now is, you know, you could trace it back to a stocked fish.
If you have enjoyed fishing brown trout in North America, you're fishing stock from a barrel, even if it is wild. They've been able to hack it and thrive. I mean, the man's hand is involved in that. And it's also a way to gauge the health of a watershed. I mean, if you're not having fish breeding in water, something's wrong with it.
We begin here this morning with the latest on Irene. The death toll is now at least 40, and close to 5 million homes and businesses on the East Coast still have no power. We begin this morning in Vermont, where the unexpected devastation from widespread flooding is immense there. The head of FEMA, Craig Fugate.
On the night of August 27th, 2011, Hurricane Irene hit Vermont. In that one night, 8 inches of rain was dumped onto the state, which was the greatest single-day rainfall in Vermont history.
We don't know what to do. Everything that we owned was in there, going from one day to the next.
This quickly overwhelmed the state's rivers and streams, causing high water and flooding throughout Vermont.
Storms are, you know, we build in floodplains, and then we try to do things to contain the water, and small tributaries taking on drainage that they're really not designed for, which you wouldn't have if there wasn't as many roads, houses, things to mainline water to the lake, into the rivers. It reveals weaknesses in the way that we've manipulated them.
Tropical Storm Irene was especially damaging to the fish populations. It is now believed that the state lost over 50% of its wild trout population that night. At this point, the scientific community has come to the conclusion that humans' effects on the planet are playing a role in these more recent hurricanes. Rising water temperatures make for better conditions for large storms to build up. Storm systems like Irene are becoming more and more common as time goes on, and they're on track to get much, much worse.
If only we had known.
Although there are a lot of negatives to big storm systems like these making landfall, there do seem to be some positives to it.
Generally, I'd say it's not a good thing, but some of these bigger rain events are good for the fish. When you get a big storm, it's going to flush out a lot of your tributaries, push a lot of smaller fish around, and the big fish will take advantage of that. Even big events like Hurricane Irene, that was a once-in-a-century flood, that can have a positive effect on a river as long as they're managed correctly after the fact. Putting trees into the river is a good thing for trout. A lot of people see it as debris from a storm, but really that's just new habitat.
All right, Galen, what are we doing out here? Trying to get some fish. We'll find out. Right now we're moving further up the river because it seems like this lower half is getting fish. Haven't seen any fish yet, but I'm hopeful because every time before this I've caught fish here. So yeah, it's all about stealth. The water's super low right now, so gotta stay stealthy because these fish will spook. We're fishing a little kind of caddis stimulator hopper fly that hopefully usually this is the kind of thing that they love, so we'll see. But
everybody loves sweet Caroline. She got everybody eating out of the palm of her hand.